Hey everybody, this is Thunder in the Spirit of Crazy Horse. And I'm going to say that every time now, in the spirit of Crazy Horse. Thunder in the Spirit of Crazy Horse. Because we have to think like that now. We have to think in that mindset of, the mindset of being courageous, I guess. Had to think about that a second, but being courageous against all odds. Fighting the good fight, walking the red road. You could call it walking the straight and narrow road, whatever suits you is fine. That's how it has to be now. It has to be that way. I saw a thing today about, I have to speak about this. Can't let it go by. I saw a thing about a wedding party in Yemen that got wiped out by a Saudi airstrike. Okay. 130 innocent men, women, and children, and I'm saying babies and women, okay? Babies and women. 130 people that were having a good time and laughing and joking and celebrating at a wedding party in Yemen was massacred by a Saudi airstrike. I want to just repeat that. So my first thing, I always like to dig for truth. And I've heard many times about puppet regimes of the U.S. that were in Yemen that have been removed. Didn't know enough about it, really. Because don't we hear things like this all the time about the Sunnis and the different tribal people going at each other? But see, the powers to be, or the U.S., or the coalition of the evil, use these things all the time to make it look like, yeah, that's just fighting between people, between factions. We don't have anything to do with that. They use that as a cover for their atrocities, okay? They use it as a cover for their atrocities. So in essence, the U.S. is allied with, the big picture, I should say, the U.S. is allied with Saudi Arabia. Of course they are. I talked about how they're in bed with them for the petrodollar and have been since day one. Yet Saudi Arabia has fallings out and arguments with the U.S. Go figure that one. But anyway, they are supported. They are given weapons by the U.S. They are given aircraft. And what are they doing right now? They're going in and trying to take out the Yemeni people that want freedom from puppet governments. I've researched this. This is what it's about. Okay. There's a king there that was exiled. His name was Mansour Hadi. And he was a puppet of the U.S. Okay, he was a puppet he was in bed with Saudi Arabia with oil and all that stuff, because that's a big oil. He was selling out his own people in their interests. And so they wanted him removed. And he was removed and exiled, and now the powers to be, the coalition of the evil, want him back in, or want somebody that's their puppet back in there. So they're wreaking havoc on all of the Yemeni people that just want a good leader. Okay? And what's happening is that they're trashing civilians. They're doing airstrikes in open air markets and to get to some of the leaders of the opposition there, which I believe are the Houthi rebels. I'm still researching this, but it's the same old story over and over and over again. That the bad guys are made to look like the good guys, and the good guys are made to look like rebels or bad guys or whatever. The same thing happening in Ukraine. The same thing is happening in Syria. The same thing is happening. Black is white and white is black. They make you think that's what they think. Okay, that's a mindset that they have. It's a propaganda 101. Propaganda 101. The mindset is black is white, white is black. The good guys are the bad guys, and the bad guys are the good guys. But rather than just sit here and talk about all that stuff, let's talk about the 130 people that were massacred, and that's just one airstrike. But this, for some reason, this just like when I heard wedding party, and when I associate wedding parties with happiness. I mean, even in the Bible, Yeshua created wine, okay, for a wedding party. And it's supposed to be a happy occasion and a sacred occasion, okay? And for people to, now what would happen if, let's say in the United States, there was a wedding party, there was a wedding party in the United States, and 130 people were blown to smithereens with body parts everywhere and babies blown up and women and children. How do you think that would go over here? What do you think would happen here if that happened here? Would there be outrage? Would there be people pulling their hair out going, what happened here? Would there be a government condemnation? Well, of course there would, but it would all, the government part would be all phony, because this government is supporting and is allied with the Saudi government, and they're supplying them weapons, the same weapons that are doing this. And there's thousands of people that have died like this. Thousands. This is like the genocide that was committed on the Native American, or on any group that they've committed genocide on, and there's a whole list of them. I want people to really realize, okay, what's going on here, okay? How can you sit by day after day after day? How can any of us sit by and let our government or the people that are ruling us get away with killing and murdering innocents? Butchery. It's like we're standing by watching people get butchered and going, oh yeah, they're at it again, the tribal people over, and it's not about that. Now this act, I think, happened in the last few days here, and it's just like it got to me. 130, but it's thousands. But that was something that got my attention about Yemen, and Yemen is not talked about, is it? So the leader of the UN highly condemns this action, and you know what? The UN is like that's how I think of it, unproductive, unimaginable, undone. They don't do shit. And why do people like Putin give it any credibility at all? He knows, but he's playing the game, I guess, or it's just a game. The UN was formed, it was the League of Nations, and it's always been a failure. It's just a puppet. It's nothing. It's nothing really. It hasn't done any good at all. If anything, it's caused division. And do they when they condemn acts like this, They won't even name specific parties. They'll just say the airstrikes. Why don't they just come right out? If they were an organization that was interested in truth and punishing criminals, why don't they just say the Saudis have to cease and desist killing innocent people, and the U.S. has to cease and desist from supplying them weapons to do so? Why don't the UN do that? United Nations. I don't think there's any United Nations anywhere. They're all splintered. They're all... And you know, I was watching Putin's speech, and I was like on the edge of my seat paying attention and like to his every word. And these people out in the audience are like yawning and talking on their cell phones. The United Nations Security Council, they're showing pictures of what these people are doing while Putin's talking, or Obama or anybody. They're just like, oh yeah, and they're talking on their cell phones. They're talking to each other, and they're joking with each other, and they're having little, while they have these things in their ears that are, you know, the speech is being interpreted, but they're acting like a bunch of high school kids. They're acting like a bunch of high school kids. Sitting out there, this guy is a head of one of the biggest nations on earth, and they don't even give the respect of... See, so this is exactly how I feel about the UN. The United Nations, the unproductive, so what are they going to do about this massacre or any massacre? And see, so this is just like Ukraine. This is just like what's going on in Syria. This is like what's going on in all the Middle East, Libya. It's all about the United States and their murderous allies in NATO, okay? The NATO alliance, deep dark stuff, Gladio B operations, covert black ops around the world, evil incarnate, Murder Incorporated. There used to be a group called Murder Incorporated, a mafia group. This is worse than that. This is 20, 30, 40, 50,000 times worse than Murder Incorporated. It's like a death squad from the sky. This coalition of the West and NATO is like a massive death squad, a worldwide death squad. Mercenaries hired to killed killers, killed killers. I'm upset about this, really. I mean, you know, things are happening in my personal life that upset me enough, but this kind of even puts that, I mean, my personal life pales in comparison to the horrific deeds that are being done around the world to people. People just, the thing that gets me, okay, and this is like, if you're an American, okay, and you think that you're civilized, okay, and you think that you're moral, and you think that you are a Christian or whatever, which is okay, that's okay with me. But if you think all those things, and if you think that you stand for goodness and righteousness and justice and all those good qualities, and you hear things like this, and you let it pass, you don't. You don't stand for those things. You don't stand for any of that. It's called lip service, okay? If you don't say something about this stuff, if you don't be a troublemaker, if you don't be a truth teller, and speak out, you're complicit. Okay? You're complicit, aren't you? Because let's say that you were a witness to a murder, on the street. Let's say you saw somebody attack a woman and a child and murder them, and you turned a blind eye to it. You looked the other way. You just said, "Oh, that's the shit that happens on our city streets," or whatever. Wouldn't you be almost complicit in that murder? Wouldn't you be held accountable somehow, but in a court of law if you didn't? And yet these same people that would hold you accountable if you turned a blind eye to that are the same people that are committing these acts, these murderous acts like you just saw on the street. Okay? And so by their standards and by your own standards of like being a moral, upright citizen, point I'm trying to make here is you have a complicity. If you remain silent and you see these things happening and you don't take action, you don't speak out, you don't talk to others, you don't go, "Wow, did you see what happened today?" And Yemen, and most people, you mention Yemen to them and they'll go, "Where's that? What's Yemen?" Well, it's a group of people just like us over here, group of citizens. And you know what else they're doing to Yemen right now? They're placing embargoes. They're stopping all food, all products, everything from going in there that would keep those people, they'll starve to death. They already are starving to death. They've created an embargo. They've stopped ships from coming in that are delivering them food and just basic necessities of life like we get every day. And I often talk about, what would happen here, the carnage here, if there was no food on the shelves, and that's going to happen here too, by the way, so at some point. To imagine that, and that's what's happening in Yemen. And again, this isn't just in Yemen. It's carnage around the world. Carnage. Murder USA, Murder Incorporated. USA and NATO, Murder Incorporated. That's what they are. This bloodshed in Yemen and around the world and in Ukraine. I mean, I don't know why this got to me today as much as it did. Maybe it's just because I'm sensitive anyway right now, and I don't usually go on about world affairs, but how can you say you have a heart or say that you have a conscience and not even know what's going on around the world or know what's going on, how countries are being manipulated and taken over by this country, by the USA, okay? All you patriots out there and all you, okay, so there's some real patriots that know that the Constitution has been obliterated. And then there's the phony patriots, the jingoists that just go, USA, USA, bunch of lump, meathead, vegetable brain people. It's a horrific state of affairs, people. You really need to think about this. You really need to think about what's surrounding you. Why everything in the world is so bad right now. Why is it bad? Why is this evil incarnate, this negative energy permeating everywhere? everywhere. What's up with this? It's because good people that call themselves good people stand by and aren't good people. You need to, you Christians that say that you believe in Christ and in His ways, you don't. Not if you just stand by and let this stuff happen. You don't believe in Him. You don't believe in His blood's atonement and sacrifice and all that stuff that you say you do. You can't, you can't let things like this go. Without, you just can't let things like this go. It's your fellow man. It's the basic commandment of Yeshua, right? Isn't it? To the least of my brothers, you did these things, so you've done it to me. I mean, whatever, that's just something comes. I don't know. Isn't that a scripture? What you've done to these my brethren, you've done to me, or whatever. I'm not sure of the wording, but that's the gist of it. And that's what supposedly you'll be held accountable for. So, what's up with just standing around? And this is on all levels, people. I mean, this is like, people have become so complacent about other people's problems and I mean, and this is why. I mean, if they don't care about people getting murdered, okay? If they don't care about people getting blown to bits and babies getting blown to bits and have just become so hardened and immune and whatever to that, are they going to care about another person's personal problems? That kind of puts it all in perspective, doesn't it? Are you going to care about, and you should care about everything. Little problems, big problems, the suffering of people. I just can't believe the suffering of mankind. I just can't believe the massive suffering and heartache and injustice. Where's the mercy? Where's the merciful, loving personage? Where is mercy and love? Have these things disappeared from consciousness somehow? Conscience? How about inbred conscience? How about just feeling bad when you see something happen to somebody? And that's just so hypocritical, isn't it? Because sometimes you'll see people go, oh, that poor whatever, they should be so-and-so, and they'll see a shooting, or, oh, well, there should be gun control, that poor person, gun control. They focus on, like, gun control. How about world weaponized governments? Weaponized governments. Governments that sell weapons to all kinds of other and supply weapons to fanatics. They're talking about gun control, guns being in the wrong hands here of law-abiding citizens in America, and they're handing out weapons to like freaked out mercenary people in the Middle East that are mercenaries. They don't belong to any tribe, or they may, but they sell themselves to the highest bidder. Doesn't matter. And then mercenaries come in from other parts of the world and congregate and just sell themselves to create little different proxy armies and ISIS and all that. ISIS is nothing but a big conglomeration of CIA-funded mercenaries, mercs, and they got advisors in there. Another thing about Yemen is that they're friends with Iran, supposedly, and so that's another thing. And yet, so you got the U.S. dealing with Iran. Now, does this make sense to you? You got the U.S. dealing with Iran, okay, but yet Saudi hates Iran because they've always been at each other's throats because of the oil thing. And that's why the falling out has been lately with the Saudis and the U.S. So the U.S. is making deals with Iran, but yet they're supplying weapons to the Saudis, okay, who are angry at them because they're making deals with Iran, but yet they're still doing the bidding. The U.S. is doing the bidding of the Saudis, and the Saudis is doing the bidding of the U.S. in conjunction or in a unified effort to eliminate the people in Yemen who are friends with the people in Iran, and again, who the U.S. has just made deals with and is trying to see. You see the convoluted reasoning here? I mean, there is no reasoning. It's all convoluted. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's become so corrupt that outlaw gangs it's like outlaw gangs being on one side in the Old West, and then, I saw a movie the other night where somebody that had built a big ranch up was defending it from homesteaders coming in, and the homesteaders hired an outlaw gang to rustle cattle, and then that same person that was trying to get the homesteaders out tried to hire that same outlaw gang to get rid of the homesteaders, okay? So they're both using the same outlaw gang to get rid of one another. That's kind of what it's like. It's like, wow, I watched that old movie and I went, wow, that's kind of like what's happening here in reality, okay? And the fact that it's in an old Western movie shows you this kind of thinking goes back a long time. Goes back a long time into the 50s. Before that, just had a different, it was a different face on the same old thing, So anyway, I guess my whole point of this whole thing is that I'm just astounded, and I think people should share this video to wake people up and think about what's going on in the world. In the spirit of Crazy Horse, one who defended his right to be free. Guess that's what spirit of Crazy Horse really means, defending your right to be free. Protecting innocence, protecting your own. Something to think about, isn't it, people? On the verge of this, let's say post-UN meeting, not on the verge of, but right after, or this post-UN get-together. Incidentally, Obama and Putin talked, and you hear one side say one thing, and how can two people come out of a meeting? How can two people come out of a meeting and say diametrically opposed things about what went on in that meeting, and nobody hold them accountable for it? They can come out of a meeting and say really nebulous stuff about they came to some kind of agreement, but yet they still say things that show that they didn't come to any kind of agreement, and they're totally at odds with one another. This is called diplomacy, okay? Diplomatic hijinks, diplomatic shaking hands out there in the public. Yeah, you know, they stick their hand out and shake each other's hand. One's looking off into space like, huh, am I really doing this? And the other's guy's looking. I've seen pictures of Putin and Obama. Putin's looking at Obama like, is this guy for real? And Obama's just like, huh? Staring off into space and holding his hand out like, nobody home here. I'm not really doing this. I'm just posing for the camera. This is what we have. This is what we're dealing with. This is the kind of idiots in this country that don't seem real. And if Putin or any other leader is real and is trying, I guess they have to try to do it through these channels. I don't know, but these channels don't work. The UN doesn't work. Diplomatic meetings don't work. You have the Minsk thing over and over and over again, where the Normandy Four keep meeting over and over and over again about the Ukrainian crisis. That doesn't work. It's just all a show. It's all a show. It's all a put on. Just like the stock market is a put on, and the whole financial hijinks is a put on. You people need to put on your thinking caps and share this video. If you think that I'm speaking truth here, share it. If you think that there's something that people need to have their consciences just nudged a little, or listen to this guy, listen to what he has to say. And I research this stuff. I'm not like a conspiracy theorist. I do research. I do research on what's going on in Yemen. I do research on who the president there was and why he left. I do research on the history of the relationship between Saudis and the USA. I do research on the history of the relationship between the Yemen and the Iran. I do research on the Middle Eastern thing. Sometimes I let it go and I don't talk about it, but I do research it because it's just the same old history. I'm interested in history and I'm interested in strategy, like chess, the art of war. I look at it from that perspective sometimes. I just look at it from the perspective of like, what are they doing now? But see, the thing is like, when they start making moves like you can't figure out what they're doing, or what they're doing, let's put it this way, what they're doing doesn't make sense, like what I talked about a little earlier in this video. Enemies supposedly being enemies but being friends. That's impossible, people. Think about it. You can't be an enemy and be a friend. Okay? It's a matter of you're acting like a friend, but you're using your enemy. And you're acting like your enemy's your friend, but they're not your friend. And these people don't know what friendship is. All they know is manipulation. They don't have any idea about friendship. And isn't that evident in our society as a whole? Think about these things. I'm Thunder. I'm going to end it here and say over and out. Blessings to you all, and I love all you good people out there. I do.